Okay, everybody. Let's see. We're going to read Revolutionary Spain by Karl Marx in 1854, October 30th, 1854, in the New York Daily Tribune. It was I guess almost would be like what we'd call a progressive newspaper in the United States back then, that like Lincoln would read. And Marx contributed a lot of articles to it. A lot of people don't realize that Marx was regularly writing in the United States, or having articles published in the United States, especially during the Civil War, and also about slavery. So we'll get into that at some point. But let's read about revolutionary Spain. This one is called Revolutionary Spain. It says let's see, Roman numeral 5. It might be of a bigger piece of writing. Let's get into it. The Central Junta failed in the defense of their country because they failed in the revolutionary mission. Conscious of their own weakness, of the unstable tenor of their power, and of their extreme unpopularity, how could they have attempted to answer the rivalries, jealousies, and overbearing pretensions of their generals common to all revolutionary epochs, but by unworthy tricks and petty intrigues? Kept as they were, in constant fear and suspicion of their own military chiefs, we may give full credit to the Wellington when writing to his brother, the Marquis of Wellesley, on September 1st, 1809. I am much afraid, from what I have seen of the proceedings of the Central Junta, that in the distribution of their forces, they did not consider military defense and military operations so much as they do political intrigue and the attainment of trifling political objects. In revolutionary times, when all ties of subordination are loosened, military discipline can only be restored by civil discipline, sternly weighing upon the generals. As the Central Junta, from its incongruous complexion, never succeeded in controlling the generals always failed in controlling the soldiers, and to the end of the war, the Spanish army never reached an average degree of discipline and subordination. This insubordination was kept up by the want of food, clothing, and all the other material requisites of an army. For the morale of an army, as Napoleon called, it depends altogether on its material condition. The Central Junta was unable regularly to provide for the army, because the poor poet Quintana's manifestos would not do in this instance, and to add coercion to their decrees, they must have recurred to the same revolutionary measures which they had condemned in the provinces. Even the general enlistment, without respect to privilege and exemptions, and the facility granted to all Spaniards to obtain every grade in the army, was the work of all the provincial juntas, and not of the Central Junta. If the defeats of the Spanish armies were thus produced by the counter-revolutionary incapacities of the Central Junta, these disasters in their turn, still more depressed than government, and by making it the object of popular contempt and suspicion, increased its dependence upon presumptuous but incapable military chiefs. The Spanish standing army, if everywhere defeated, nevertheless presented itself at all points. More than 20 times dispersed, it was always ready again to show front to the enemy, and frequently reappeared with increased strength after a defeat. It was of no use to beat them, because quick to flee, their loss in men was generally small, and as to the loss of the field, they did not care about it, retiring disorderly to the Sierras. They were sure to reassemble and reappear when least expected, strengthened by new reinforcements, and able, if not to resist the French armies, at least keep them in continual movement, and to oblige them to scatter their forces. More fortunate than the Russians, they did not even need to die in order to rise from the dead. The disastrous battle at Ocaña, November 19, 1809, was the last great pitched battle which the Spaniards fought. From that time, they confined themselves to guerrilla warfare. The mere fact of the abandonment of regular warfare proves the disappearance of the national before the local centers of government. When the disasters of the standing army became regular, the rising of the guerrillas became general, and the body of the people, hardly thinking of the national defeats, exulted in the local successes of their heroes. In this point, at least, the Central Junta shared the popular delusion. Fuller accounts were given in the Gaceta of an affair of guerrillas than of the Battle of Ocaña. As Don Quixote had protested with his lance against gunpowder, so the guerrillas protested against Napoleon, only with different success. These guerrillas, say the Austrian Military Journal, Volume 1, 1821, carried their bases in themselves as it were, and every operation against them terminated in the disappearance of its object." End quote. There are three periods to be distinguished in the history of the guerrilla warfare. In the first period, the population of whole provinces took up arms and made a partisan warfare, as in Galicia and Asturias. In the second period, guerrilla bands formed of the wrecks of the Spanish armies, of Spanish deserters from the French armies, of smugglers, etc., carried on the war as their own cause, independently of all foreign influence and agreeably to their immediate interests. Fortunate events and circumstances frequently brought whole districts under their colors. As long as the guerrillas were thus constituted, they made no formidable appearance as a body, but were nevertheless extremely dangerous to the French. They formed the basis of an actual armament of the people. As soon as an opportunity for a capture offered itself, or a combined enterprise was mediated, the most active and daring among the people came out and joined the guerrillas. They rushed with the utmost rapidity upon their booty, or placed themselves in order to battle, according to the object of their undertaking. It was not uncommon to see them standing out a whole day in sight of a vigilant enemy, in order to intercept a carrier or to capture supplies. It was in this way that the younger Mina captured the Viceroy of Navarra, appointed by Joseph Bonaparte, and that Julian made a prisoner of the commandant of Ciudad Rodrigo. As soon as the enterprise was completed, everybody went his own way, and armed men were seen scattering in all directions. But the associated peasants quietly returned to their common occupation without as much as their absence having been noticed." End quote. Thus the communication on all the roads was closed. Thousands of enemies were on the spot, though not one could be discovered. No courier could be dispatched without being taken. No supplies could set out without being intercepted. In short, no movement could be effected without being observed by 100 eyes. At the same time, there existed no means of striking at the root of a combination of this kind. The French were obliged to be constantly armed against an enemy, who continually flying, always reappeared and was everywhere without being actually seen, the mountains serving as so many curtains. It was, says Abbé de Prat, neither battles nor engagements. This is in quotes. It was, says Abbé de Prat, neither battles nor engagements which exhausted the French forces, but the incessant molestations of an invisible enemy who, if pursued, became lost among the people, out of which he reappeared immediately, afterward with renewed strength. The lion in the fable tormented to death by a gnat is a true picture of the French army. End quote. In their third period, the guerrillas aped the regularity of the standing army, swelled their corps to the number from 3,000 to 6,000 men, ceased to be the concern of whole districts, and fell into the hands of a few leaders who made such use of them as best suited their own purposes. This change in the system of the guerrillas gave the French in their contest with them considerable advantage. Rendered incapable by their great numbers to conceal themselves, and to suddenly disappear without being forced into battle, as they had formerly done, the guerrilleros were now frequently overtaken, defeated, dispersed, and disabled for a length of time from offering any further molestation. By comparing the three periods of guerrilla warfare with the political history of Spain, it is found that they represent the respective degrees into which the counter-revolutionary spirit of the government has succeeded in cooling the spirit of the people. Beginning with the rise of whole populations, the partisan war was carried on by guerrilla bands, of which whole districts formed the reserve and terminated in corps francs, continually on the point of dwindling into banditti, or sinking down to the level of standing regiments. Estrangement from the supreme government, relaxed discipline, continual disasters, constant formation, decomposition, and recomposition during 6 years after the cadres must have necessarily stamped upon the body of the Spanish army the character of praetorianism, making them equally ready to become the tools or the scourges of their chiefs. The generals themselves had necessarily participated in, quarreled with, or conspired against the central government, and always thrown the weight of their sword into the political balance. Thus Cuesta, who afterwards seemed to win the confidence of the central junta at the same rate that he lost the battles of the country, had begun by conspiring with the Consejo Real and by arresting the Leonese deputies to the central junta. General Mora himself, a member of the central junta, went over to the Bonapartist camp after he had surrendered Madrid to the French. The The concompio, the concompico Marquis de las Romieras, also a member of Junta, conspired with the vainglorious Francisco Palafox, the wretched Montijo, and the turbulent Junta of Seville against it. The generals Castaños, Blake, La Bisbal, and O'Donnell figured and intrigued successfully at the times of the Cortes as regents, and the Captain General of Valencia, Don Javier Elio, surrendered Spain finally to the mercies of Ferdinand VII. The Praetorian element was certainly more developed with the generals than with their troops. On the other hand, the army and guerrilleros, which received during the war part of their chiefs like Polier, Lacy, Roles, and Villacampa, from the ranks of distinguished officers of the line, while the line in its turn afterwards received guerrilla chiefs like Mina, Incampensanado, etc., were the most revolutionized portion of Spanish society, recruited as they were from all ranks, including the whole of the fiery, aspiring, and patriotic youth inaccessible to the soporific influence of the general government, emancipated from the shackles of the ancient regime, part of them, like Riego, returning after some years' captivity in France. We are then not to be surprised at the influence exercised by the Spanish army in subsequent commotions, neither when taking the revolutionary initiative, nor when spoiling the revolution by Praetorianism. As to the guerrillas, it is evident that having for some years figured upon the theater of sanguinary contests, taken to roving habits, freely indulge all their passions of hatred, revenge, and love of plunder, they must in times of peace form a most dangerous mob, always ready at a nod, in the name of any party or principle, to step forward for him who is able to give them good pay, or to afford them a pretext for plundering excursions. Okay, yeah. So that was Marx, Revolutionary Spain by Karl Marx, 1854, in the New York Daily Tribune. Yeah, so, Facebook, Marxist Saw, Twitter, Marxist Saw. I need to get my Twitter up, so if y'all got Twitter, please go follow me there. TikTok's Marxist Saw, YouTube is Marxist Saw. And I have a Tumblr now, Marxist Saw. And where I have articles released now is on Medium. I have a Medium now. Marxist Saw on Medium. And I think I'm going to have I think it's called Mozilla soon. Marxistsaw.mozilla.com. I think I'll be having that soon. Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me. Message me on any of those, or you can get me on email. You go to my Medium to get my email, or it's marxistsaw@gmail.com. If you want to message more privately, it's marxistsaw at Proton. At protonmail.com. Marxistsaw on the Proton one does not have the ST in Marxist. So yeah, message me and reach out, and we're gonna have some more readings coming soon. I'm writing more now too, doing TikToks and all kinds of stuff, whatever I feel like doing. Okay, y'all. Thank y'all. Dodada goy.